rest. Um, yeah, so again, thanks for all coming out. This workshop is led by Mosope. Everyone say hello. um, as most of you guys know, he's also a judge. So, just thank you again for volunteering so much time to this event. And I know everyone's super excited to hear your workshop. So I'll pass it off to you. Again, feel free to share a screen and start introducing yourself and kick things off whenever you're ready.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Anna. And, hi, everyone. Hope you're doing great. And, this hackathon, I believe, is going to be amazing. So I want to see, how you guys are feeling in the chat. If you're feeling good, put a thumbs up. If you're in between, put a smiley that just meh. And, if you're really looking forward to this hackathon, you can just put your reaction in the chat. I'll share my screen and we'll get started. So, yeah, I can see everything in there. And yeah, can everyone see my screen? Fantastic. So I'll be giving a presentation on designing for diversity. And, afterwards, I'd love to take questions. And yesterday, I wasn't really able to stay in the opening session to, maybe chime in and answer questions. So, I'm also a judge at this event, and I'm really looking forward to seeing the kind of products that you guys come up with, and which, brings me to the theme for my talk today, designing for diversity. And in this talk, I'll introduce myself. You guys get to know me. I'll talk about making design welcoming to all, and speak about why belonging matters to designers and how we design for belonging, and also some visual design tips on designing for inclusivity. So I want you guys to get to know me. My name is Mosope. I'm really super passionate about easy to use and accessible technology. And I have this little kawaii illustration that a friend of mine did for me. I like watching anime, by the way, so representing myself there. I'm currently a senior product designer at Meta. I work within the ads org, and I lead a team of about 3 other designers, and we're working on one of our can't fail projects, which is going to really, impact a lot of revenue, and we'll have users from across the globe. In my free time, I mentor designers and I volunteer at ADP lists. I've mentored designers from about 17 countries across the globe. I have up to almost 4,000 minutes now on ADP lists, and I've mentored designers from early stage designers, mid-level designers, senior designers, staff designers that are my level also too. So in the future, if you want to speak with me, please you can book a session with me on ADP lists. And in my work experiences, I studied geology in university back in Nigeria. I'm Nigerian, and I didn't have a design background, but I loved graphic design. I love seeing the shiny posters and fancy stuff. So I picked up Photoshop, back in those days, and I started designing. And when I finished at university, I knew I didn't want to, go into geology. I wanted to rock in a different way. So I picked up graphic design. I freelanced for a bit. Then I worked in an e-commerce company in Nigeria called Conga, and worked in a technology company as a lead designer. And when I moved to Canada, I switched fully into user experience design, and I worked at KPMG. KPMG is one of the big 4 accounting companies where I designed software for enterprise software for accountants. And currently I'm at Meta, where I'm designing ads and business products for some of our biggest clients. So I'll dive right into my talk, making design welcoming to all. And I want to give a visual illustration to just kind of paint the scenario. So let's go back to our childhood, or depending on how your childhood was. So think of a park or like a playground. Let me put it that way. So right now we have an empty playground. Now, if you're being charged to design a playground, and one of the things you do is I want to put things that kids can play and engage with in the playground. And in the playground, I just say, hey, kids love swings. I'm just gonna put swings there. Whenever I see a park, I like to just play on the swing. It reminds me of my childhood, but I just put swings there. What is gonna happen is you have some kids that will engage with the swings, but you also have some kids that will want to play with the swing, so there won't be anything left for them to do. So all the children that are in the park won't be able to engage. Instead, what you should do is to create a way that multiple people can engage. So that's why you see playgrounds with different kind of things, from the sandboxes to the swings to the shuttles, to the chutes over here to, I don't know what these things are called. But basically, you have the scooters, you have a way for every kid to do something. And, kids kind of get bored easily. So they do the swing, then they'll participate with, the tube over here, play with the sandbox, and everybody is happy and everybody is able to engage. And it's the same mindset that we can bring into design. Participation does not require a particular design, but we should remember that a particular design can prohibit participation. Depending on how you design your products and tools, some people might engage with it, and some people might not engage with it also, and it's not intentional. And I'll kind of speak to that as we go on. Now, I'm sure, if you're familiar with the design space, you've heard about accessibility a whole lot. I see it a lot in reviewing projects from boot campers, accessibility. If you're familiar with accessibility terms, like, oh, I check for color contrast, typography, and all that particular stuff. There's also inclusivity. Now, accessibility is an attribute of the final product, like I mentioned, checking for the contrast, font sizes and all that stuff to ensure that screen readers can pick it up. Whereas inclusivity focuses on the process of making a design user-friendly to the broadest range of people. Inclusivity is thinking about your design and saying, hey, I want my design, especially if you're designing for a global product, I want people in North America to use this product. I also want someone in another part of the world, someone in Asia. I want someone on the continent of Africa. I want people in Australia. I want someone in Europe, in Antarctica or the waters. I want them to be able to use my product and still be able to get that same experience. Inclusive design is a mindset, and accessibility is one outcome of that mindset. There are many ways to think about this. And, when I see designers just say, hey, I've done all my font checking and all that, and I look at the flows in design, I'm like, have you considered this point of view? Do you think someone, in this particular place, for example, or someone that's using a feature phone, or a country, for example, where they don't have very fast internet, do you think that they might be able to relate with the things that you're currently designing, especially if you're putting lots of heavy things in there? It's always very good to have this in mind. And hopefully, as you're working into your hackathon and doing creating your products, I'd love to definitely see more of these innovations in the designs. And I'm taking this quote from Susan Goldsman. She says, or they say, inclusive design doesn't mean you're designing one thing for all people. You're designing a diversity of ways to participate so that everyone has a sense of belonging. You're designing, for example, multiple entry points, different ways for people to do different things within a particular product. Someone is using some kind of if, for example, someone is using some specific screen reader, or someone is using some kind of ways to engage in stuff, can multiple people come in and use your product? And there's this chart I want to kind of explain for a bit to kind of show some of the terms I'm talking about. And this was adapted from Chris Burnett, a conversation about equity, diversity, and inclusion. And the first circle we have here is diversity, which is multiple identities are represented. You have different people from different backgrounds being represented. You have inclusion, thoughts, ideas, and perspective of all individuals matter, which is really very important. And I want you to start, as you're building your team, because in a hackathon, I don't think you can work alone. Thinking about these things is very important. Equity, constant and consistent recognition and redistribution of power. So equity is ensuring that everybody, not equality, everybody has a seat, at the table, and our voices are all heard. Now, if you have inclusion and diversity in the scope of the project or the team that you are working on, what happens is, and you don't have any equity, the dominant group or ideology is deferred to for making decisions and opportunities. And I've seen this in some of the teams I've worked with where the loudest person in the room is the person that has a say, and some people have very some people might have more extroverted personalities. They're able to dominate and speak and all that, but you should allow everyone on your team or everyone in your structure to have an equal voice. Let the ideas be heard. And it's not one person that just calling the shots and making the decisions. Now, if you have equity, diversity, but you don't have inclusion, what happens is cultural assimilation will result in disengagement. You have some cultures people can be a shadow of themselves, and all that culture will start absorbing things. And if you have equity and inclusion without diversity, what will happen is you have an oversaturation of similar homogeneous cultural views and very simplified points of views. Whereas everybody's not thinking out of the box, everybody's just thinking in one direction because it's only one way that you are doing things. But once you have everything in balance, what you have is belonging, where you have like, there's a full potential of all the individuals, where like, innovation thrives and views, beliefs, and values are integrated. You understand? For example, like, I didn't grow up in North America. And people like, if you grew up in North America, or if you're born here, like your family's been in North America for a very long while, you have a different point of view compared to someone that immigrated when they were like 8 years old, compared to me that immigrated when I was in my 20s. We'll have a different point of view, and those points of views are very important to hear as we are building out our product, our designs, and all that. Now, belonging involves like, safety, trust, bringing voice and agency, in the sense whereby like, there are ways to do things that, result in the expected end. Why does belonging matter to designers? This is really important. Why should you care? Aside from, working in the product that millions of people across the globe will use, why should you care? If we don't intentionally include, the risk is to unintentionally exclude. And it's a very good thing that happens over like, over here. I'm sure whenever you go to like shopping malls, you see ramps like, for disabled people, for example, or differently abled people. You see parking spots for differently abled people. And it's ensuring that we are, in that kind of scenario, you're designing or creating spaces like, that is not unintentionally excluding someone. And I see this day to day, like, for example, I might be, you may be at the airport, and then you see like, there's specialized line for people that are differently able, they're able to skip the queues and all that, and ensuring that everybody is included in what they're doing, and we can apply some of those principles into design. And I'll give some examples. This is, during the early days of like, picture recognition, AI, and I know AI now is way better, but back in the days where like, Facebook would recognize your face and all, for example, this is Oprah Winfrey, the AI system, says, oh, this appears to be male. And that's because like, Oprah has a very broad face. And what happens is when in the initial days of when training these data models, there wasn't a lot of pictures about of diverse people used in products. So the application couldn't learn about different people, and then was training different errors. For example, I know you guys must have seen that particular reel or TikTok that went during the pandemic where, a white person would use the hand sanitizer, it would come out, but the black person would try it, and then nothing comes out because the infrared or whatever can't pick up the different skin tones, and different examples like that. Also, back in the early day, when if you go into Google and you search for 3 black teenagers, the first results that will come up will be mug shots and all that. Whereas if you search for 3 white teenagers, to be like, friendly people, stock images that kind of come out. And it's been based on the way the imagery has been trained to bring out information, which is then resulting in different biases. And also, when Siri first came out back then, Siri found it really very hard. I remember when I was in Nigeria, and it first came out on my iPhone 3G or whatever, or 3GS or whatever back in the days, it found it very hard to recognize my voice because I wasn't speaking because I had my accent. And now it's better because it's been trained with different multiple models, up to the point where if I say, hey, Google, and you have a Google assisted device, it might just pick up my voice and start, saying different comments. And I have to turn off my phone so it doesn't really pick that up. But yeah, how do we design for belonging? Now, I was preparing for this session this morning. I saw this particular quote and I found it very, very impactful. Design is a powerful tool that has both empowered and destroyed communities. And there are ways that has happened. It is incomplete without diverse voices. If we are to truly design with empathy and in service to better outcomes, we need a variety of voices, perspectives, and experiences at the table. We also need real connections to the communities who are impacted by our work, so we can surface their needs authentically and free from bias. For example, if I'm designing an application that takes into consideration, like, the LGBTQIA community, I am not part of that community. I can't say I really understand what is happening. If I don't have someone on my team, or I don't go to that community to learn about their experiences, I'm not able to truly design for their solution. Or for example, I'm designing like, for marginalized women, for example. I don't identify as a woman and I'm not in the marginalized community. I can't say I understand designing for them. So if I just say, oh, I think I know what they want, and I just design something, and that is not actually what they want, I'm excluding them in that sense. So in order to design, like, for belonging, you need to start with the self level, then you move to the team level, and you move to the product level. The self level is something that you can control, you. The team level is something, and the product is something that you can influence others. And I'll go deep into these. With yourself, check your biases and assumptions and prejudgments. It's one thing that even at work and everything, because thanks to the media and all that, we kind of have biases that, oh, something's happening somewhere and all that. You need to check your biases. For example, like, this is a very easy one. If you're watching any Netflix movie and all that, once you show Mexico, it's all brown and in sepia and all that. And you get to Mexico and realize, oh, the weather is really, really pretty nice. Or if they're going to show like, Arabia or something, you have the desert, you have a camel somewhere, and just kind of raises a bias that, oh, everywhere in the Middle East is a desert. And these biases we have, we bring them into products. And, also it's very important, like, to take time to explore the subject, like, go in there, like, review yourself. And once you do that, you're then able to move to the team level. And, it's very important to, as you're designing, what point of views have I not yet considered? As you're thinking about your flow, one of the things that we'll be judging on is to see, like, did you thoroughly think carefully through your flows? Is there another way for you to have solved this problem? Are there other things that you could have included in your flows? You can start with yourself and do that as you're working on the designs. And, like I mentioned earlier, you hear a lot about empathy, and it's one word that is a buzzword I'm turning around. Oh, as designers, we're empathy. But is empathy actually enough? Empathy is actually not enough. It's not enough. And the limitations with empathy is I can try to understand what you're going through, but unless I've been in the shoes of what you're experiencing, I can't say 100% understand you completely. And that's why empathy has its limit. You're building a team, build a diverse team, different cultures, abilities, genders. If you're designing your product also too, if it's a product that, that has a very wide personal range, think about different abilities, the cultures, abilities, gender, ages I'll be using this particular product. Don't expect people to conform. There's always going to be edge cases and unhappy paths in that sense. Give people in your team a voice, solicit their input, let people share their stories, and, delegate power to those that are affected. And as you're working on this product, own the impact of your product, define what success will look like. And if something fails, you can always go back and fix it and, make remedy to your particular flows. And also, however, a diverse team only goes so far, which brings us to the products. Like, as you guys are brainstorming and doing all that, I know in the hackathon you might not have enough time, but if you have the opportunity, invite users into the process. Let people talk and speak within your particular flow, hear what they are thinking. Design for the most vulnerable, and you definitely will succeed. And keep in mind that misuse of your product is not an edge case. Like I mentioned, the edge cases or scenarios that you've not considered. But if you design something and you didn't design it properly, that is not an edge case. And create designs to change behaviors and not keep them going forever. Apple does this, in a very amazing way. And for example, like I'm sure you like in imagery, for example, and all, like using a diverse set of images, a diverse set of personas as you're working on your designs. And as you're working on your designs, like a lot of people here might not be content writers, but writing inclusive copy in the product that you're creating is also a very good way to ensure that your product, like is really, really designing for belonging. Don't use cultural reference to your products. Use very simple languages. Don't use metaphor and idioms as you're writing your words. Use a more conversation tone than a technical tone. Use smaller blocks of text, clear hierarchy in heading and sub-headings. Keep in mind the regions they are designing for. Different countries have different things that that they expect in designs. For example, like I know, like in some parts of Asia, red is a very good color. Like it's a color that means a good thing. Whereas in some other parts of the world, red means danger, and also, like keep in mind the region you're designing for as you're choosing some of these styles. And also I saw this example, like, for the design from Lemonade, and, it was really, really very good how they designed it. This screen, for example, you could design this thing with using of imagery, like, oh, just me, and maybe put a man or a woman or someone else. But in this example, the design is abstract, so you can't assign like a gender or whatever to this design. It's just like, based on the number of toothbrushes, which I kind of found like, really pretty interesting. So thinking about things like that, like, it can help you to, create that sort of belonging in your products. And I'm just going to wrap up quickly here. Bad designs makes users blame themselves. If you've done usability testing before and you find people trying to test your product, sometimes they get frustrated, but you should realize that it's not the fault of the designers. It's the fault that it's not the fault of the users. It's the fault that we as designers haven't designed this thing properly to enable them to, really use the product. And as you are going through this hackathon, or even like, after this hackathon and you're designing generally, listen to others. It's very important. I've worked in a hackathon before or in a group project where, a lot of people were opinionated and like say, hey, this is how we should do things. And, the product wasn't really very successful because we didn't consider all viewpoints. Resist your biases. We all have biases in one way or the other. Listen to your teammates, learn from each other, and ensure that you're affecting change as you are, designing your product. And, definitely I'm looking forward to seeing how this goes tomorrow. And yes, that's it from me. And if anyone has any questions, it would be great to hear from you or anything in particular. But thanks for listening to me talk for the past 20-ish minutes.
Yeah, thank you, Mosope. I just wanted to quickly say before anyone has other questions that like I found your presentation really informative. I remember learning about some of these topics as well when I took like a social analysis of computing class. Like at UC Irvine, and it's just like definitely interesting to see how like the biases like we innately have in ourselves can definitely get translated into the things we make. So like it's really, really important to like notice that and like resist it as much as possible. And yeah, I just found your presentation to be really good. So thank you.
Thank you.
And I noticed someone asked if they could have the slide deck. Yeah, I think I cleared that with you already, right, Mosope? I'm planning on sharing the slide deck in the Discord after this, so you guys can refer to that. And we're also recording this workshop as well for people to look back at.
Yes, please. And yeah, thank you so much for listening, everyone. So I don't know if anyone has any questions, comments, topics, or even like, just starting your projects, any challenges you might be facing, it might be good to answer those.
Yeah, definitely. Since he's a judge, you guys can ask some things like right now if you wanted to. I think you mentioned it doesn't have to be necessarily related to the talk.
Yeah. Yep. There's a question also too in the chat, like, from Kimberly. What do you mean by use a more conversational voice than a technical one? That's very good. So a lot of times when we are writing, the words in our products, we tend to, write in a robotic way rather than conversational. And I'll give an example. So in one of the products I'm working on, there's something about, programs where a program is like, a particular event where people like, do things. And we created a button, and the button on the text, one of them said create program. Another one said new program, or add a new program. And adding a new program, and we saw people kind of responding more to adding a new program compared to just create program, because the create program was people like, oh, like I don't really understand what program means, and yet asking me to create one, but add a new program kind of resonated to them. And I'm sure you've seen like, different applications where like, the application asks, hey, what do you want to do today? Are you sure you want to make that option? Those kind of ways, like, compared to like, oh, get started, click here first and all that. So I can't think of like, like some examples, right now, but at least the few I have in mind. When you're thinking about like, flows and all, a conversational one is like you're actually talking to the person and asking them questions rather than just really, really being really very strict about what you are saying. So that's the best way I can explain it. I hope that answers your question, Kimberly. Yep, awesome. Thank you. And there's a question from Anna in the chat. When designing in short time frames at the designathon, how would you recommend making sure that we're including a diverse range of voices outside of the team? That's a very good question. So my one question is, I don't know the rest of the composition of people that you have in this particular hackathon, or the diversity of your team. So within this particular short period of time, either you lean on your your team members. If your team is diverse enough, that really works fine. I don't think you have enough time to get feedback in this short range. But if you're also able to get, if you get feedback from people outside, and like, I remember I did a particular hackathon and we had to run to a Starbucks somewhere and had to do like scrappy usability tests. It was really very scary but this was before the pandemic, so it wasn't that bad. But we're able to, and as we're looking for people to speak to, we said, hey, I want to speak to a man, I want to speak to a woman, I want to speak to a Black person, I want to speak to an Asian person, I want to speak to different set of people to get that particular feedback. So if part of your hackathon is to reach out to people, try to do it in a way that can get diverse people. There will always be people that are diverse around you, and you have to just make the extra effort to do that. So I hope that makes sense. Okay, sweet, thank you. And there's also a comment from Navneet. The red color symbol, it talked about how do you go about in regions that perceive red to be as a good color? Would you use a different color? So if I'm designing specific for a particular region where red is a good color, definitely, why not? I can use that. Or and this is part of where you can kind of get feedback by showing people that and saying, hey, what do you guys think about this design? Does it apply? Sometimes if you design a product, it's kind of neutral or uses more of earthy tones and all that. Earthy tones are the earth is everywhere. So those colors might work in that sense. So for example, I know if I visit some particular websites from Asia, there are lots of bread and all that, which is pretty good. Here in North America, you don't tend to see lots of colors, loud colors in design. They're usually very mute, and all. So if you find just by asking questions of those particular different regions, you can gauge what is a good color and what isn't. And also when in doubt, you can kind of check some of the websites of those particular pages. A while ago, I was speaking with a designer in Japan. I was on a podcast where we were speaking, and I don't know if there's anyone any Japanese person over here, but in Japanese, if I'm designing brochures on websites, they like to have it a lot of text heavy because people, a lot of Japanese people want to be able to read everything all at once and go into detail. So you see a lot of text heavy website, text heavy pages and all. But here, on the other side of the world, people don't read much. If you put a lot of text heavy stuff in your product, people aren't going to read it. They're going to miss all the information, so it's just kind of different. So yeah, I think just to wrap up to that particular question, asking questions if you can understand, or Google is your friend. Even ChatGPT is an amazing resource that can do to ask you that question, and it can give you the answers you need. So yeah. Awesome. If there are no more questions, I can pass it back to you, Hannah, and I'll just stop sharing my screen.
Yeah. Yeah, I think if there's no more, that's fine. Mosope is also on our Discord, and I don't know if you happen to be available. I'm sure maybe if people have any last questions, they might ask it in the channel, in the Discord. But for now, I think that should be it. Obviously this isn't the last you guys will see of him, so he'll be here and judging tomorrow with all your guys' submissions. So yeah, I just want to say thank you again. I mentioned it earlier, but this is being recorded. We are going to post this as well as a slide deck in the Discord shortly after. Yeah, thank you again, Mosope. That was really interesting talk, and I hope a lot of people found that really informative, as the project and the theme around this whole event is largely related to what you presented about. So I hope everyone can take that in mind as they make their projects today.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me, and I look forward to seeing the amazing work they're going to put together in this 24 hours, 48 hours. And yeah.
Perfect. All right, everyone. Thank you. Our next event, we have mentor office hours at 11 a.m. So about a little less than half an hour. So feel free to join that on our Discord as well. And then our next workshop is at 12 p.m. PST with Joe Cahill on being authentic. All right. Thank you, everyone. Bye.
Thanks so much. Bye, everyone.